I know I said Dilla wasn't really a rapper in my episode about donuts. What I should have said was that J Dilla was predominantly a producer but also a thorough lyricist on certain projects when he wanted to be, and I apologise for getting that point across incorrectly earlier. This is a look at some of his verses over the years. Thelonious as a track title could be referring to Thelonious Monk, a pioneering jazz pianist who had a unique improvisational style. Aunt Esther was a fictional character from the television series Sanford and Son. She is a staunchly religious Baptist who finds little use for humour, and her temper and demeanour is what inspires Dilla in that first line. Raw Duke, more juice than Sunkissed, could be referring to Duke Ellington, who was one of the greatest composers ever, and juice in this instance is referring to his status and power. Nag Champa is actually a fragrance of Indian origin made from a combination of sandalwood among other items that is known to be an aphrodisiac, hence the title of the track. Like Water for Chocolate was important because as an album it represented a change in the hip-hop lyricism of the time by Common to more spiritual and overt styles of thinking. With the first line, there's a direct reference to Ultramagnetic MCs, a hip-hop group based in the Bronx, founded by Kool Keith. It's interesting because in the chorus, Dilla actually sings, and Common explained in an interview later that Dilla was always intending on doing an entire singing project but never got around to do so. It's all work, no play, get more money. The hustler's attitude is ingrained in Dilla, but as he says later, and more problems, no doubt. This was likely a reference to Mo Money Mo Problems, which was a single by the Notorious B.I.G., the second single from his album Life After Death. More isn't always better. The hassles and stresses with more wealth and fame often rise exponentially. Many rich people go off the rails because they have too much money and didn't become centered, stable individuals first. There's that line, knowing they some actors. This could be a reference to fake lyrics. Akon, for example, said he was once facing 75 years in jail in an interview, but he had only been convicted of one felony for gun possession, for which he only got 3 years probation for. It's about lyricism not reflecting reality and conforming for popularity. The Official has a line, like I used to, I don't have time these days, which is actually taken from Gang Starr's 1991 track Take It Personal. He's talking about how people getting older often means more responsibility, and with that responsibility comes more things to do away from your usual hobbies and friends. On the track Champion Sound, he keeps talking about his car, 22s, aka 22-inch rims, and third row square 10s, aka subwoofers. Champion Sound is a track samples Fancy Black's Stand Up and Fight, an 80s dancehall track that inspired free speech. Reunion was a track of Detroit Deli, a taste of Detroit by Slum Village, comprised of rappers Buttin and T3, plus rapper and producer J Dilla. Dilla had left the group in 2001 to pursue a solo career with MCA Records. Elzhi's joined the group around that time to replace Dilla. Buttin then left the group in 2003 as he was later diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder and depression. Elzhi's verse mentions a lot of these things in his verse, with lines such as, I'm shocked in the interviews, and it's not fair when I'm learning about how stressed you feel in an article. Buttin died on July 31st, 2009 at the age of 35. He was found in his home on Angling Street in northeast Detroit. Following a homicide investigation, the cause of his death was found to be drug abuse. Volume 2 as a project was nearly entirely produced by J Dilla. Yes, he had help from D'Angelo on one track and Pete Rock on another. Although the album was criticized by some for its lack of pure lyricism and its misogynistic tendencies, it is regarded as one of the most well-produced projects in hip-hop history. The line, "What you know about the Great Lakes," is a jab at people who aren't from Michigan, which is a state that has 4 Great Lakes surrounding it. Home plate is another baseball term for the final base that a player must touch to score. Again, an emphasis on the need for stepping up your game in the rap world. Get This Money also samples Herbie Hancock, who is one of the most influential keyboardists of our time. He helped to redefine the role of a jazz rhythm section and one of the primary architects of the post-bop sound. He mainly experimented with jazz and electro-funk styles. Moet and Crystal are both 2 types of champagne. And this is interesting because Jay-Z recounts in his memoir, Decoded, how he would be drinking crystal in clubs in 1994 when few of his contemporaries had heard of it. It told people that we were elevating our game, not by throwing on a bigger chain, but by showing more refined and even slightly obscure taste, he says. We didn't have a record deal yet, but back when we'd show up at the clubs in Lexuses and buy bottles of crystal, while most people in the clubs were buying Moet, it was a symbol of our whole game. Sean John refers to Diddy's clothing line and also mentions Rolexes, both additional symbols of opulence. The Shining was a posthumous release, which was completed by Kerem Riggins, who himself was an American jazz drummer, hip-hop producer, DJ, and rapper hailing from Detroit. The entire album was star-studded and had guest spots from big names like Common, D'Angelo, and Black Thought. As this was a release after Donuts, as Bonafide says, people were keen to understand the versatility of the producer and rapper, to explore it as part of a narrative growing up around him. He refers to Chris Tucker in Fifth Element, where Chris played Ruby Rod, an utterly eccentric character. Funnily enough, Prince himself was originally cast as Ruby, but disagreements over the costume meant that he dropped out of the project. Dilla on this project strove to continue making heads turn as well as nod, with his unique and eclectic production style, while also showing a ton of love for his hometown and allowing some fellow Detroit artists to gain some exposure. This part from Shake It Down is actually roughly taken from East Coast rapper Biz Markie's song The Vapors, which in itself represented the ironic life story of him and his fellow Juice Crew members TJ Swan, Big Daddy Kane, and Cutmaster Cool, along with talking about his nostalgia for the past. Welcome to Detroit as a track is also a tribute to all of Detroit and what Detroit rap stood for. In the late 90s and early 2000s, the Eastside Cheddar Boys and Street Lords were laying the foundations for Detroit street rap. The music didn't reach far beyond there, but their local impact was massive. In the late 2000s, Doughboys Cash Out picked up where those early collectives left off. Dilla also got Detroit singers on this album too, like Dwele. Ralph James Rice, aka Young RJ, and Curtis Cross, aka Black Milk, make up BR Gunner, a production duo with ties to fellow Detroiters Athletic Mike League and Slum Village. In 2004, Rice and Cross put together the sequel to Slum Village's Dirty District mixtape, with guest spots from JD, MC Breed, and a cast of up-and-comers. Detroit as a city having high crime rates is no strange thing to Dilla. As he says, it's a part of the culture that he grew up with, and even to this day it's something that is still present. During a press conference at Public Safety Headquarters in late June, when 29 people were shot in Detroit over the weekend, leaving 4 dead, Police Chief James Craig attributed the crime to tension from state-ordered shutdowns during the coronavirus. Crime is often more common in locations where the economy is not as prosperous, like in Detroit. The city's annual unemployment rate is 9%, which is much higher than Michigan's 4.1% unemployment rate. The unemployment rate of the United States in 2020 is only 3.5%. The poverty rate in Detroit is 37.9%, more than double that of Michigan's 15.6%. As XXL said, the diary gives us an alternative look at Dilla, someone who might have been considered an MC first and foremost if his time with MCA didn't result in label frustrations. Dilla's known for the soul in his music, but his bars on the record reminded us that the man was also tough as nails. The diary in its final form was painstakingly assembled over a 10-year period from 2-track mixdowns and multi-track masters found in J Dilla's archives after his death in 2006. The completion of the diary was overseen by the estate of James Yancey's creative director, Ethan Alapat. The track Trucks was mostly rhymes to represent opulence, as before. However, the song samples Cars by Gary Newman, who is an English singer, musician, songwriter, composer, and record producer. He entered the music industry as the frontman of the new wave band Tubeway Army. On the track The Sickness, there's a link to Chevrolet and Jeeps, which are particularly large, flashy vehicles and are one of Dilla's personal interests, which given Detroit's significant motor industry is actually quite relatable. Detroit is best known as the center of the US automobile industry, and the big three auto manufacturers, General Motors, Ford, and Fiat Chrysler, are all headquartered in Metro Detroit. The Sickness was produced by Madlib, someone he collaborated with before on Champion Sound. The Sickness features a Nas verse where he himself talks about topics like ego, success, and self-confidence. The diary as a track is a throwback to Dilla's youth. You can hear him talking about the environment that he grew up in, the Motown music he grew up with, and the rampant unemployment that the youth grew up with around him, which resulted in the crime that he saw on a day-to-day basis. Dilla on Reckless Driving mentions the Low End Theory, which was the second studio album by the hip-hop group Tribe Called Quest. The Low End Theory was largely produced by group member Q-Tip. It's a project that had a minimalist sound which combined their usually intricate samples of drum breaks and jazz. Lyrically, the album featured social commentary, wordplay, humour, and a constant back and forth between Q-Tip and Fife. Dilla mentions another car brand, Cadillac. Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, a French explorer, actually founded Detroit, Michigan, and that's where the name Cadillac actually came from. Dilla also gives a shout out to huge artists of the time, The Roots, Pete Rock and CL Smooth, Busta Rhymes, etc. With the line The Filth, The Flawn, The Nights with the Pimps, The Hard Hitters, etc., he establishes the hazy mood of Detroit as mentioned on the track, The Diary. This is an extended recollection of what he grew up with, aka not good role models. While Y2K was a scaremongering issue mainly revolving around programming issues, Dilla mentions that other MCs are scared of him in the same way as they were of Y2K. Note that the posthumous re-release of Ruff Draft is made up of an obscure EP from 2003, 2 new tracks, 2 alternate takes of the intro and outro, and a disc of instrumentals. This project as a whole was more on the experimental side. As Jetmag said, like so many musical talents who shed their mortal coil at a young age, his legacy has experienced a whole new life of its own in the 8 years since his passing. The expansive body of work that he left behind, along with the seemingly endless repertoire that has lent itself to numerous posthumous releases, garners the utmost respect and continues to inspire awe in a new generation of musicians and music lovers alike. Thank you for listening right till the end. Hopefully you've learned something interesting about J Dilla's history.